Hey guys, it's that time again. Time for some obscure, well, sort of obscure toy lines from the 60s, 70s, 80s, all the way up to today. This is episode 48. Thanks for stopping by. We'll start this week off with Crashback XRC by Tonka, 1996. Crashback was a very innovative remote control for the time and quite possibly the grandfather of the bounce back from the late 2000s. The RC's gimmick was a rubber middle portion of the car or the truck's body. It would compress on head-on impacts or falls, and then it would spring back to its original form with the press of a button on the remote control itself. Despite a decent ad campaign, I remember seeing commercials for these all the time, the Crashback didn't sell well, and a lot of them ended up on Radio Shack discount shelves. Stretch Screamers Electronic Toys, 2000. Can you believe it? These toys are almost 23 years old now. So the Stretch Screamers were a line of toy monsters from the early 2000s that could be stretched, causing them to scream. They also featured a balloon feature that when they were squeezed, balls of colored liquid would pop out of them at various spots. Some of the older models had hard plastic hands, but this was fixed in a revised second and third series. Connectables by Matchbox, 1989. So the Connectables were a range of small model cars that closely resembled the die-cast Matchbox cars. These were made out of plastic though, and they were mostly two segments that could be pieced together by pegs. Some of the bigger versions did have 3 and 4 segments, most notably the limousine, but the gimmick of these toys was that you could mix and match and create a half plane, half tank, half car, half truck, and so forth. Later on in the series, they did come out with some play sets, some bridges, and of course they did add airplanes. So this was one of the last pieces to come out for the Universal Monsters toy line by Remco in the 80s, and this is a great depiction of what it looked like from the early 1930s Frankenstein monster movie. I think that was James Whale. And it's just, it's got the table, it's the perfect size for all the Remco figures. It's kind of a holy grail. It's a very sought after item for any of the Remco / Universal Monster toy hunters. Basically, it charged up the glow-in-the-dark ability of your toys, and it was just a nice play set, had great playability, and it worked. Again, it was like made perfectly for the size of the Remco characters. The Campbell's Kids Dolls by American Greeting, 1930. So the Campbell's Kids are the cartoon mascot of the Campbell's Soup Company, and they were created in 1904. Now, over the generations, there's been a ton of toys made on these cartoon mascots. Obviously, the toys were first created in the 1930s, but there's been various iterations over the years. Probably their highest peak of popularity, at least that I remember when I was a kid, was in the 80s and 90s. There was a lot of play sets, dolls, they were on cards, plates, etc. I just really thought that they should be added to this series because of their longevity. Telegames Pong Console by Sears, 1975. The success of Home Pong, just like Video Arcade Pong, resulted in a multitude of clone Pong consoles. Now, the Sears Telepong is much like the Atari Pong, but it was released 1 year earlier than the Atari version. It was sold at Sears in 1975. The Sears version even came in black and white to distinguish itself. Sears was worried that Atari would not be able to fulfill its $115,000 order of Pong systems, so they released their own under the Telestar name brand. Atari was able to hit those numbers, and it reverted back to the Atari Pong console in 1976. And that's going to do it for another episode of obscure, well, sort of obscure toy lines from the 70s, 80s, all the way up to today. If you like what you saw, let me know down in the comments, and if there's something you'd like me to cover, put it down in the comments as well. I'll see you next time, guys. Take care.